Roger Marshall, welcome to Abilene, Kansas.
Always good to be back.
We have just filmed your town hall. So as I listened to you respond to the people today, watched you closely. It's interesting to me to watch you respond as a person. So we met when you were running for office.
Remember
we sat
that?
down at Eisenhower. We had a wide-ranging discussion. We've talked about a lot of things. You hit almost every topic today because they hit every topic today. So I guess my interest is this. As we heard from people today, we saw both spectrums of the conversation, national conversation. We're in Abilene, Kansas.
Right.
We had a majority for 2 years, House, Senate. We're now in the minority. You are now in the minority.
In the House.
How is business going to get transacted with these polarities set where they are?
It's a pretty tough situation right now. The truth is, I don't think Nancy Pelosi wants business to transact. So it's very hard. So I think there's things that she and I agree upon, and we even agree upon the solution and how to get there, but she's not going to give President Trump a victory. You know, and I think what I heard people today ask me is, are you standing beside the president or are you not? I think sometimes we try to make this too complicated. But I think that's what all across the state people ask me, are you standing beside the president? Do you support his agenda? An agenda to build the wall, for more jobs, a stronger economy, a stronger military. That's what people want to know. Are you standing with the president to complete his agenda?
And the answer is?
Absolutely, we're standing with the president. I think I agree with him on his policy. I think the country's going in a much better direction today than it was 3 years ago. So let's keep this ship turning and going straight ahead.
Can I ask Dr. Marshall a question?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, not about health care, but about Kansas.
Okay.
So you had to practice in Great Bend. You
Right.
grew up in Kansas. You're a Kansan.
Yes, sir.
You listen to us when you're here today. So the real problem of America, I think we heard today, and that is we just simply can't see things with a problem-solving, close enough point of view. How do we bridge that gap, Dr. Marshall? How do we get across there where we can talk about mental health and opioid crisis and know it's the same thing?
Right.
How do we do that?
You know, one person at a time. I think it's about developing relationships for me, is to gain your respect and me to gain your respect as well. So what I believe is that you can function at an emotional level, you can function at a rational level, but there's a level of wisdom where if you and I can agree on the goals and objectives and not keep fighting about how to get there, to quit saying yeah but. So if you want to fix the opioid crisis and you give me we agree there's an opioid crisis and you give me a solution, so instead of me saying yeah but, instead I would say love your solution. How can we take your solution and my solution and come up with a better solution? So I think from a spiritual standpoint, I think that's basically my Christian faith in practice, is going to this level of wisdom.
Would agree with you, because I think we're speaking from the same point of view as a Christian faith, all right? How do we take the right and wrong and apply it in Washington today? I don't see much discussion about right and wrong. I see left, right, you're good, I'm bad, but I don't see right, wrong.
Yeah. So my life is not like that. On a day-to-day basis, I have great relationship with Democrats. You know, I shared with the group here today. Every Tuesday night I have dinner with about 15 or 20 senators, House members, Republicans and senators. Every Thursday morning, 70 of us gather together to pray, sitting down with Democrats on the House Ag Committee, sitting down with Democrats who worked in health care. So how do we do it? To me, it's one person at a time. Get away from the TV cameras. What I'll see is people, we'll have a great conversation, we'll walk outside and there's a TV camera, and all of a sudden they're backed into a corner on this issue. And if you're a Democrat or Republican, it seems like the reporters are really good, pushing you further right or further left. So turn off the TV cameras, let's get behind closed doors and say, what's the problem? How is this trade issue impacting someone in California or Texas or Minnesota for that matter?
So I heard you talk about immigration a lot today. As far as a humanitarian crisis for us as a country, that's probably the biggest humanitarian crisis we have. I believe it's self-induced. We're almost bringing these people to our country. I have no doubt that they want to live here. It's a better place to be.
Right.
But if we're not prepared to take them in an organized way, aren't we creating the humanitarian crisis on the border by our open border?
Well, I guess I never looked at it quite that way. All I can tell you is we do have a humanitarian crisis. I think we definitely agree that we do have one. I think the question is, how do we solve it? And I think if we had border security and immigration law reform, so certainly the way it's set up now, for instance, how we treat asylum, we just have a really low bar for what it would take to be called asylum to come into this country, and that's one of the big places where it's being overburdened. But it is a crisis there. We need to both secure the border and we need to rework our immigration laws.
So I want to give you a good easy one as we end our
Good.
time together. So I think I asked you once before, maybe off camera, but maybe on camera, can we ever separate agriculture out of the quote farm bill that is not a farm bill anymore? It's food security bill maybe
Right.
for people, but it's not about agriculture. And if I said it before, I would have said this. Gosh, do we need to defend farming as its own item? I don't think anybody understands it, but people who do it. I think it's vital for us to be able to defend farming. And how do we ever do that when we're just so little
Right.
piece of the farm bill?
So it's not practical. What you describe is not practical. In a country, we have 435 congressional districts. Only 35 are totally a big emphasis on rural and agriculture. So I cannot scrape together enough votes to support agriculture without putting the food stamps on it. People have tried to do it. And Senator Dole, eventually, this was the only way he could get a farm bill done. And I'm not sure what year that would have been when we put the food stamps with this. So unfortunately, it's not practical. I agree in theory, but I don't live in a what do they call it, ivory tower.
Sure. You have to get things done
We gotta
with
get
a
it
vote,
done.
right?
Yeah.
So, future in agriculture. The base thing is that my uncle, 90 years old, went to upstate New York to see him this week. Got a brand new belt from an Amish guy right down the street.
Cool.
They're handmade while I was there. So we had this conversation. I said, Uncle Jim, you always told me it's a hungry world,
Yep.
and we can feed them. So this time I found myself sitting there with my 90-year-old uncle, and he says, so what's the answer? And I said, Uncle Jim, it's a hungry world, and we can feed them in agriculture if we can just quit killing each other, quit arguing with each other, and then let the market work. How do we get there?
Yeah, so you're right. The population of the world is going to continue to grow. And for such a time as this, the United States agriculture will respond. There's just certain things we can do in this country. We're so blessed. We can grow wheat and corn and cattle cheaper and more efficiently than anybody else in the world. So as these populations increase in India and China and Africa, we'll be poised. But we have to have free and fair trade. We can't give them unlimited access to our markets for iPads and iPhones, but then we don't have access to their markets as well. So we just want free and fair trade. I think the trade agreements we're writing today, history will tell how big of a deal it is, whether we get it right or wrong. And I think President Trump is trying to get it right.
I so appreciated you saying today in front of the group that while tariffs aren't our natural inclination, you have watched President Trump use them to make deals, and deals have to be negotiated. We don't live in a free and fair world, and sometimes you have to use a stick.
Yep.
But we're close to needing the deals done. Confident you're working on that.
Yeah, we can't argue with the results, can we?
Right,
We can't
no.
argue with the results. So the way I was raised and taught was not to use tariffs. But I'm not the president, and
Me
that's
too.
what he's done, and here I am. So I got to figure out a way to work with the president to get this job done. But I would tell you, and he just told me this in the Oval Office 2 weeks ago, if we didn't put tariffs on the table, China would not be there at the negotiating table. They would not be there.
I live and work in sales. If you're not prepared to say no and walk away, you're not going to get a deal.
Because sometimes the best deals we've made are the ones we didn't make.
That's right. Roger Marshall.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.